now out on the racetrack is IU Luddy out of Indiana University. We know that there will be a lot of people in the paddock happy to see these young men and women and what they're able to do.
Yeah, they had a little incident on Monday. Wasn't too bad. There's some front suspension damage, and we were able to get the car back on the track. So I feel like they're probably starting out a little bit conservative here. They've done a great job of coming online, this team, over the last couple of years, and really, becoming one of the contenders overall. Maybe a little bit wide there going in, but they're looking pretty good so far. They came by at a pretty decent speed.
The Andretti hairpin is very difficult to learn, and especially with the double apex, not many people can figure that out the first time around, let alone computers. So it is definitely a voyage of discovery, but thankfully this machine is able to get back up to speed. And I'm seeing a lot of accelerating and decelerating between the corners, much more than we've seen from the competitors at the early gambits of their runs.
Yeah, they may be a little bit uncertain about how much grip they're going to have in the corners. So as the vehicle is going, they're going to learn this, and as they come back down the front straightaway, they will be able to actually beam information back to the vehicle and say, hey, speed up, or run a slightly different line. Some of the teams will have pre-programmed in certain different lines based on what they're seeing on the track. There's a whole, I could say, game to this competition where you're taking the data that's coming in off the car and trying to make those decisions in about a minute or so, right? You have to say, okay, I went through a few corners, I need to make a decision quickly, which is part of racing, right? They say, I think you may know better than I do, but it's, you have to make a 2-minute decision in 10 seconds, or it's kind of what ends up having to happen. And so the teams are having to do this as well as they watch the data come off the vehicle. But you're always weighing the risk, right? Okay, if I make this change, is it going to work? Am I going to end up off track, and out of the competition, that sort of thing. So it's a difficult challenge. It's nerve-wracking for the students involved, but it's part of being in the real world, and so it's great to see them getting to do this.
That's exactly it. If I carry slightly more speed through turn 5, that means I'm going to be faster by the time I get to the braking point of turn 6, which means I need to brake harder. So yes, it's exactly that lesson of development. And you mentioned they're trying to send these signals to the cars, but the students are having to actively code. It's not as if they're just able to say to the car, hey, turn left 10 feet sooner. Nope, they have to speak a completely different language to make it happen.
Yeah, we're not there yet. Oh, looks like locking up the
up.
brakes there into the corner. Yep, another lockup. Looks like they're going to stop. So there's a good example of where the vehicle got off track. The vehicle was not happy with its location difference from where it was supposed to be, and it put itself into an emergency stop. So they'll be out of the competition, unfortunately. But they were looking pretty good there. You can see that in the lap before, they were a little bit off of maybe what you'd want the line to be. It looks like it got a little bit worse as they sped up, but that's just part of the competition as they go through.
I really like to see the daring nature and the boldness of this team, though, not being as hesitant, being more eager to sort of get that pace out of the car in between, as you mentioned, in between the corners, because that's the unknown. It's really easy to put your foot flat on the floor when you're going in a straight line, but when you have to slow down and turn, that's when it gets a little bit more difficult, and the computer was able to recognize that as well. I'm sure we'll be scrambling our tow vehicle to go and retrieve this car as well, and then we should be able to resume the competition. So as it is right now, Cavalier Autonomous Racing, the University of Virginia, is leading the way with the only sub 2-minute lap time. Is IU Luddy able to get the car pointed in the right direction and moving again. Now, I wonder if they can tell the car to come back to the pit lane, and then we'll be able to get things going again even quicker.
Yeah, I think so. They're likely just coming back into the pits. They would have flat spotted the tires. I'm not sure if they'll be allowed to keep going here, but it's possible they could keep going. There is some language in the rules about being able to recover the vehicle, but I think in this case they'll likely receive a black flag and have to come in and pit. Or they'll tell it to, hey, don't do that next time. Slow down, right?
Yeah.
It's hopefully the thing. But this is again where is it worth the risk? They can look at the data from the first lap that they have to see how close they were to the other times of the other vehicles to see if they have a chance of making it to the final round. And maybe if they don't, then you'll see them likely just pull in.
We'll have to keep an eye on the car and where it goes when it gets around the back side of the track. So in about another 60 seconds from right now. Just taking a very conservative line around the track at a very safe pace. not as if they're working themselves into another fast lap there, Rob. So I think we are correct in the assumption that this one will not be able to participate further, which means that we still have 4 teams left to come. Cast Racer, I would imagine, would be next. California Institute of Technology, just based on what we've seen through the practice days.
Yeah, I believe they'll be firing off Coust next. So they're still sitting on pit lane right now, but I think they're probably waiting to make sure that this IU Luddy car comes back and makes it back safely, which it looks like they're doing. Made it through the corkscrew there, no problem. So they're starting to head down the hill here. So I think they'll get back in. They likely flat spotted the tires when you saw the tire smoke there on screen.
Oh yeah.
Which isn't really good, right? Because that really lowers the traction. It puts vibrations into the vehicle, which makes everything a little bit more difficult. I would think that you wouldn't want to keep running with that, but you might be able to, right? So it just depends on how severe it was. It maybe wasn't that bad.
He's
see if they come around. They're just staying back on the track. Yeah, so they're letting them keep going here. See how they do. As they come through the corner, they look okay.
I really like the line that the vehicle took through the corkscrew. It was slow, purposefully so, but it was a very nice apex of the top one at the very least. And now we're back up to speed, so let's see if maybe a lap or two to try and get rid of a bit of the vibration that the flat spot would have incurred. It was a rather large lockup and a very large plume of white smoke that came out of the tire. But the good news is the car is able to keep going, and hopefully, we talked about vibrations being an issue early on. Hopefully the vibration that would have been created by that flat spot doesn't rear its ugly head in some other form later on in the run.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can see them going into turn 2 again. They kind of took a an odd swerve into the turn there, so it seems like they're still having a little bit of issue there. But hey, they made it through, and looking good on the other parts of the track so far. And the teams, I spoke to a couple teams about this earlier in the week as well, that they had a little bit of trouble kind of aligning where the vehicle was on the track with the GPS signals, and so that might be part of it. Like where is the ideal line? Is it actually here where I think it is, or is it a few meters away? And so there's a little bit of this struggle all the time to figure out exactly even where the track location is. It sounds a little odd. The track is stationary, but it's not always perfect. If like here's the base track data that we have, and this is actually where the vehicle is. They struggle with this sometimes, and so you can see the car do things like that every now and then. It'll kind of swerve around. It's coming back down the hill here, looking pretty good as they go through, and then they'll come through this banked corner here, and you can usually get on the gas pretty hard before you have to do heavy braking down into turn 11.
Well, you say the track doesn't move, but when you drive in through Boundary Road, you're going through Fort Ord, and there's unexploded ordnances around, and they do some bombing training and such, so maybe the track moves just a couple millimeters every year. Maybe that's just kind of stacking up.
Sure, we'll see how they do as they get down into turn 2 again. They just go through turn 1. This is where they had their issue earlier. Heavy on the brakes, you could hear them back off the throttle and that squeal. You could see that kind of back and forth a little bit that the vehicle did, but it's going to make it through.
It's so funny how it keeps doing that initial turn in to turn 2 and then decides no, too soon, swings back out wide, and then takes another shot at the left-hander. The rest of the corner looks very good, and the route around turn 3 is actually fairly clean, giving a lot of cushion toward the exit of turn 4. And gets close to the curbs, but not as close as we could see if the car was on the absolute ragged edge. So I like the speed that we're seeing from this IU Luddy car, even if we're not necessarily seeing all of the speed being taken advantage of. We're definitely seeing them giving it a little bit more gas than most people would after having an issue on the track.
Yeah, for sure. It's another nice thing. Without a human in there, you don't have to worry about this, right? There's the confidence. They have all the confidence they ever want, right? You don't have to worry about regaining confidence. Now the engineers down in the pits are certainly concerned, right, as they're watching this, but the car doesn't know any differently, right? It just says I got to keep following this line. It doesn't have to get back in a rhythm or anything like that. It can pretty much just get up and keep going, assuming the car is still healthy enough to do so.
Yeah, well, and a very healthy first lap time after that, 107.692. That's kilometers an hour. We've had confirmed from the powers that be, so thank you to the wise voices in my head. But that is the second best that we've seen. The first best was from Cavalier Autonomous Racing, leading the way. They were at 108.16, so we're not that far off. IU Luddy comes back, and now they beat that, so I would imagine their lap time is also below the 2-minute mark. So that means that all of a sudden we go from having a car that was stranded at the Andretti hairpin to setting the fastest time that we've seen thus far. Now, unfortunately, with that spin being a bit lengthy, they're not going to get as many laps as the competition, Rob, because they do have that time frame, the set deadline of when they are allowed to try and set their times.
That's right. Looks like I would guess they're going to get one more lap here because the clock keeps ticking on them as they were stopped down there in the corner, and their race control can make a decision on whether or not they would take additional time away. But in this case, I don't think they would. They're probably just going to let them go and just give them still the full 12-minute window that they had.
Decent line through turn 5 there as the car backed off quite a bit. I couldn't tell if that was lifting coaster or if it was indeed full brakes. But we did get the turbo wastegate flapping, that little chirping, so we know that the engine is still working hard as he comes up the hill and prepares once again, does this robot, to attempt the corkscrew. This is the most difficult turn on the circuit. The left, very nice line through the curb, goes all the way over to the right-hand side of the track. Hesitant to get back out on the throttle, does not use the rumble strips, but other than that, a very clean line through the corkscrew. Down through turn 9, exited 9, looks good. Now preparing for the difficult braking of turn 10. Very banked corner. Are you going to get back on the throttle early? He does. It does get back on the throttle early. This could be a very good lap as long as turn 11 is not compromised. Early braking, little bit of white smoke might have been from the center of the car there, as now it accelerates and crosses the line. Do we get an improvement in far as pace is concerned? Yes, we do. 109.171 kilometers per hour. That is our new fastest.
Looking really strong there, doing a good line. Still that same kind of odd back and forth into turn 2, but everywhere else looking outstanding. The line that they're choosing. So this is great to see. It seems like they're pushing a little bit harder as the tires warm up and they have a little bit more confidence in the vehicle. So great recovery by this team. I'm impressed. I didn't think they had a chance when they're stuck on the track, but this is really impressive to see.
And just in case some people are joining us now, whether you're around the circuit at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca or joining us online on our YouTube stream, these are autonomous vehicles. They are driving themselves, and they are computers that were told what to do when they left the pit lane. There is a control to the pit lane still that is basically an emergency off button. There is no human telling these cars where they should be at the time around the circuit. This is technology. This is the future. This is the Indy Autonomous Challenge. Very slow
really
at the top of the corkscrew there.
Yeah, I think they're coming back into the pits. My guess is their time is out here. They put in 5-time laps, and teams were thinking they would get between 5 and 8 laps is generally what you could see. I think with the spin that they had, this is probably the end. You're going to have to come in here under the black flag, basically, to come into the pits safely. And kind of interesting that you mentioned it earlier, Shay, that is they come into the pits, the car will actually just stop somewhere near its pit lane or near its pit spot. Oh, they're staying out on the track. It will come in and it will stop near the pits, and then the team will come out and retrieve it after the car shuts down. So just from a safety point of view, that's something really critical. They want to keep people off pit road and make sure they're safe. Now it's back heavily on the gas, so maybe they just kind of avoided that line and kept going here. So.
109.636 kilometers an hour that time around.
Oh.
So
Even
we
better.
improved
Okay.
even more.
Okay.
That is three speeds better than anyone else has achieved. So even if they were to have one or two of the fast laps taken away from them, Rob, because that's been early on, they're still good enough in and of their own right to hold that top spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that one, because the red flag didn't come out, I think all of their laps will count. They were able to recover. And the race control is now sending out the Keist vehicle right behind them. So you expect the IU vehicle to come in to the pits this time around as the Keist vehicle goes out to warm up.
And Keist is one of the teams that is possibly the furthest along, or at least they should be, because they started their autonomous driving adventure, I would even call it the journey, back in 2009. They've had a long relationship with Hyundai with redeveloping those cars and trying to make them autonomous. That's where they began. And it makes sense because they are a team from South Korea, but they were third at Las Vegas, not once, but twice in Indy Autonomous Challenge events. So they've been there or thereabouts. Now, the challenge of having to turn left and right is something new. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how they progress here because, well, yes, we were able to do it at Monza. That was 11 corners with a lot less severe braking. WeatherTech Race for Laguna Seca is, if you'll forgive the pun, a completely different kettle of fish, as we are near Cannery Row in Monterey, California, and really good dinner locations for tonight. And while we're speaking about what's to come today, as we are now halfway through with our teams, Rob, we do have a hard out where we have to be off the track by 3:30 in the afternoon. So what does the remainder of the program look like? Everybody else is going to get their time on the track, yes?
Yes, everybody will get their time on the track in the first round, and then the top two teams would then go to a second round and have an additional 12 minutes. But there's kind of an interesting catch there in that in case we run out of time, essentially, you can only improve your time. So your time from the first round still stays, right? So if you want to go out, you can go out and try to improve your time, but you still have the original time if you have to. So that's what the final round will be. So we'll see how it goes here as the final cars end up on the track. You know, as these faster cars start coming out, what ultimately happens here with the seating.